Philip Ingram, as I say, joining me once again. Should we start with Andy Burnham in this hour? He's just doing this whole, you know, when the Speaker is elected, and then there's this, people don't know in the Commons, there's this wonderful thing with the House of Commons Speaker is dragged to the Speaker's chair. And, oh, no, I don't want to. Having lobbied behind the scenes desperately for the gig, because you get the big state apartments and all the glory. And no, not me. And they have to, it's part of the game. And this is Andy Burnham going, oh, it's not me. Moi, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, I'm just trying to run this great city of Manchester, but all these people keep telling me that I should run for leadership. What do you make of his chances of becoming a Labour MP again, becoming Labour leader, therefore the Prime Minister of this country, and would he make a better Prime Minister than the current one?
Well, I have to agree with Andrew earlier. Anyone would anyone would make a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. But and Andy Burnham has, on the surface of it, done good things in Manchester. We're hearing lots of people saying he hasn't. We
had a call earlier saying it sounds good, but actually on the ground it doesn't feel any different.
Exactly, and I'm seeing the same on social media. So it's interesting, the persona against the reality that people are giving us, and remembering it's just one side of the reality that we're hearing. But he seems to be
he's a better communicator. We know that he talks human.
He's a much better communicator, but the challenge of him getting a seat, getting elected backbench and then front bench, and being able to garner everything to take over from Keir Starmer, I think. Reform would throw the kitchen sink and more at making sure that he didn't get in.
Yeah. Well, they would be able to block him becoming a candidate, surely.
Well, the Labour Party would try and block him becoming a candidate. Reform would throw everything at winning the election and embarrassing the government. Number 10 would back Reform and throwing everything at making sure that Andy Burnham didn't get elected. And then if he did get elected, they'd do everything to try and keep him.
They could be a parliament challenge. I mean, again, in fact, the system for mounting a challenge on not just a leader of the Labour Party, but a Labour leader who is in office. They deliberately made that harder.
Yes.
It's not quite as straightforward, interestingly, as it is in
the Tory rules.
The Tory one, they learn from all of that. It is interesting, and again, I do wonder with a lot of people, it's like Keir Starmer being. You can always see he's slightly sort of taken aback, and frankly a little bit. I'm trying to think, annoyed. I'm trying to think of something off, but I couldn't say that. That people are asking questions. It's a bit sort of like irked by, who do you think you are? Political editor of a national newspaper, or asking me a question. You sort of, and the thing is, you don't get challenged when you're in opposition the way he does as Prime Minister. And I think as Andy Burnham, you just simply have not been challenged the way you would be if you were Prime Minister as Manchester Mayor. And it's interesting, he did run for the Labour leadership twice before, 2010 and 2015. I mean, he lost to Ed Miliband and Jeremy Corbyn. What does that tell you? A, Labour Party membership votes left when it can. Keir Starmer definitely played the left card when he ran back in 2020.
Did that cost any money? And where would that money have
I don't know, where would that money be? Let's ask Morgan McSweeny. Yeah, exactly. But also that he was called Flip-Flop Andy.
Yeah.
He changed his mind on every policy blowing in the wind. So it's very easy to say, I'm standing up for the people of Manchester, and we can go, yeah, good for you, mate. Yeah, you're a good mate. You're talking about, this levelling up. Well, when's the money coming? Look after the people in the north. Stop worrying about, another infrastructure project for London. Doesn't need any more, thank you very much. I mean, that's really easy. No one's going to challenge him on that. But when you say, OK, what are you going to do about immigration? What are you going to do about debt? What are you going to be about the burgeoning welfare costs? He will face exactly the same problems as Keir Starmer does, who face exactly the same problems as Rishi Sunak did, as Keir Starmer did, as Boris Johnson did, as Theresa May did, as David Cameron. I mean, that's the thing. You don't escape the problems just because you're the new boy on the block.
Yeah, well, and we're seeing him criticising the Prime Minister, but Flip-Flop Andy taking over from two-tier Keir, that's something that is going to be brilliant headlines.
Or nothing to see here, Keir, as he's now known, over his top aide, Morgan McSweeny. Again, if Morgan McSweeny is your top aide, maybe that's the reason why things are going wrong. I know he's been talked about as this architect of this
Boris
amazing...
with Cummings, McSweeny with
Yeah, I know, this
Starmer.
architect of Keir Starmer's great thing. Keir Starmer, we know on the polls, Keir Starmer did not win the election. The Tories lost the election. They've plummeted in the polls on virtually everything, every metric they've done. He's the man who's in charge of everything. All these new phases and new relaunches, everything fails. Every speech hits the wrong note. It hasn't hasn't got a clue what he's doing. He's no good at communicating. He's no good at running. But for some reason, the Tories think it'd be a good idea to try and get rid of him. I think they're insane. I think they're the ones who are putting out this drip, drip, drip of these emails regarding the dealings between Morgan McSweeny, again, a man most of us would not recognise in the street, who is this key figure in Downing Street, very much involved in the Lord Mandelson appointment and all of that. But we now know that he was told by the electoral watchdog, the Electoral Commission, back in 2017, that any donation to his organisation, Labour Together, a think tank, would have to be declared. It's in writing, okay? He says he was told that it wasn't needed to be in writing, but there's no record of that phone call. Okay, but there is a record of him being told in writing that it was. He then, for 3 years, didn't declare any of these donations. He's got fined. Electoral Commission said it's done and dusted. Tories are now saying you need to investigate, and the police need to be involved, because we now know that he was advised to say it was an admin error when it wasn't. He was told he had to. How you don't admin error 740 grand's worth of donations and not know about it? This is not a couple of taxi receipts,
especially
or
when
someone
you've asked
donating
the question
some
and
t-shirts.
someone said you need to declare it.
Yeah, it's now looking very, very dodgy. I mean, I would say this is a story that definitely now has legs. I imagine there are more emails to come. The way this has been dripped out, there's going to be a killer email at some point. The Prime Minister has expressed his full confidence in Morgan McSweeny. Well, he did that in Lord Mandelson. He did that in Angela Rayner. He did that. He's expressed it numerous times in Rachel Reeves, and no one thinks she's long for the job. Do you think it's only a matter of time before he has to go?
Well, Morgan McSweeny has got a defence. Clearly his glasses prescription isn't right, and I've heard he's off to Bernard Castle to go and get some eye tests.
Wouldn't he just ask Lord Ali to give him a new pair? Isn't that what you do?
Well, I think he's tearing a leaf out of the Dominic Cummings.
I pay for my own glasses.
The Dominic Cummings book of excuses.
It's not going to fly.
It's not going to fly at all. He has to go. There's too much hard evidence coming out now, and the longer Keir Starmer leaves it, the more he's falling foul of his own accusations of previous prime ministers and not making decisions quickly. Absolutely,
and again, they just keep doing this stuff, and they just virtually every single one of them. I mean, okay, in this case, the Tories are whipping it up, but nevertheless, it was a problem of their own doing. Their unforced errors are off the scale.
Oh yes. Oh yeah, and this is such a short period of time into the government.
Well, this is the thing again. It's the fact that people are talking about Keir Starmer facing a leadership challenge only 14 months into an election where he's got a majority of about 160.
Yeah,
it's quite extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it.
We'll now see the backbenches forming little factions, and those factions starting in-house fighting, and therefore you'll get fighting in the backbenches. You've got fighting in cabinets already in government.
But the key thing is
and the thing will rattle itself apart.
Labour voters who are disgruntled and Labour MPs are disgruntled. Labour MPs are disgruntled because they want to make sure they can still, get big fat mortgage like Angela Rayner and pay their bills come 2029. They're facing that threat. They can see the polls. They know what's going on. There's no way they're going to let Keir Starmer now run for another term in office unless, bar a war that changes everything in the polls. And I find that very unlikely that it would actually change. War's more likely than it changing the polls. I was quite wrong at the beginning. I said, there's no way to oust this guy. He's in for 5 years. Quite wrong about that. Never say never. I've learnt that to my cost. But at the end of the day, whoever's in charge, they are still facing the same issues. And Labour backbenchers, Labour voters, the reason they're annoyed with Keir Starmer is they think he's not right-wing enough. So, apologies, not left-wing enough. They want more money for benefit. They don't want any benefit cuts. They want more public sector pay awards. They want nationalisation of many public utilities. That's actually a very popular policy overall for an awful lot of voters. They are concerned about immigration, but not in the same way that Tory and Reform voters are. More money for the NHS. More borrowing.
Money for everyone.
Higher taxes on the rich and business and all of that. They want all of that. Great, good luck with that. The country will be bankrupt within a couple of years of that. Whereas actually most voters are saying, you need to get to grips with welfare, you need to get to grips with immigration, you need to get to grips with things like crime, you need to get to grips with the burgeoning debt, and also understand really that you can't just keep taxing the rich until the pips squeak, because the pips leave the country. They don't squeak, they go and pay their taxes elsewhere. I know a lot of people, if their tax rate went up to 50%, they're people who came from absolutely ordinary backgrounds, who worked incredibly hard, very long hours, and done really well in life, and they're earning those sort of salaries where it was 150k, you start paying 45% tax, plus your national insurance, you're paying over 50%, over half the money you earn, you're paying in tax. Those people will just say, I'm out. I'm out. And they really will. We know they will, because that's what happens in every country that does that, and that's what Andy Burnham is supporting. But but here's the thing. I mean, the thing is, even if they did replace Andy Burnham, do you think it would even change them in the polls?
No, not in the slightest. And the trouble is, what Labour is doing, and Andy Burnham is doing as well, is he's coming at things from an ideological perspective, not a logical perspective where he sat down and planned it. Got his sums out, got his calculator out. Not Diane Abbott's calculator, but a proper calculator, and worked out what sensible policies would be, that albeit slightly left-leaning. He's just coming out with sound bites, and
that's what he did in the last election.
Exactly.
That's why he didn't win it. Yeah, flip-flop Andy. Well, we will see. Andy Burnham, you're welcome on the show at any time. Of course, burning on in the background, we've got the background of the economy, low growth, inflation rising, unemployment rising, everything going in the wrong direction, and that budget coming up in November, and there's going to be some horror stories coming out of that. We've also got immigration, horror stories day in, day out, front pages. Even the BBC this week got to grips with, turns out, migrants are getting £300, one way, each way trips to go and see their GPs, and we're paying for it. Even the BBC started waking up to, maybe this is all a bit of a bad idea. That is such a big change. But the latest two stories we've got this, family of three are the first one in, one out of the migrants to arrive in Britain. We've got an Afghan dingy migrant who filmed himself coming over through all these safe countries. He's granted asylum here. 2 years later, he goes back to Afghanistan on an 8-week holiday, films that. Home Office does absolutely nothing. We also know that foreign criminals, even Romanians, we're paying them £2,000 to agree to be deported. Why are we paying people £2,000 of our hard-earned money to be deported, especially Romanians? I mean, seriously, they're in the EU. We can just send them back anytime we want.
We should be doing that. And it's interesting. I read this morning that the Home Secretary is concerned that all of this money is being spent out of her department. She should,
she should know already.
She should know already. Someone in her department has signed this off.
It's only when it's on the front page of the Sun that they actually care about this stuff.
Yeah, and this is where it shows how your journalism holding power to account needs to do more and more and more, because they don't hold themselves to account. They're not looking after taxpayers' money in a way that we'd expect the government to do. They're deliberately wasting it until they get caught out. I mean,
we even had a migrant who got this £600 round trip to go and see his old GP. Seriously, you move house, you're not entitled to go back to your old GP. You have to move. University students, you have loads of people like me, will have a youngster going off to university. You have to transfer to your university's GP surgery, and then you're not allowed to go to your local one. They literally won't treat you because you're not registered at that GP surgery. But migrants alone are allowed to go back. Oh, you first arrived here. Oh, fine, 400 miles away, not a problem. Get a taxi. But they're not given a train ticket. They're not given the money for a train ticket, but they are allowed to get a taxi. How dare the Home Office authorise that? I mean, put them on a coach, lend them a bike.
Yeah, a train ticket's probably more expensive than a taxi, as someone who takes the train. But other things, GPs are going to migrant hotels to deal with them. When's a GP come out to you or anyone else? They're having their appointments taken up, and some of them blocked off for the migrants that are coming through. Sorry, if you haven't contributed anything to this country, you're not entitled to anything.
But also, again, if it's an emergency, fair enough. We're a civilised country. Yeah, but well, no, make your own way. Use your Deliveroo bike to go and head yourself to the local custody unit. But again, it's the idea that a bunch of these young men, right? Yeah. I mean, young men don't go to the doctor. You know why? Because they're not ill.
Yes.
They're not ill. They're not. They're not having pregnancies. They're not elderly with geriatric problems. They're not having They haven't got young children. Sorry, the idea that these people should be a priority for healthcare is an absolute sodding joke. It genuinely. What do you make the Boris? Again, all week. It's one of those things about my job, okay, is things I swear like a trooper. There are people in the army who would be shocked by the amount I swear off air. Don't do it on air. I'm allowed to sodding. Bloody, I'm allowed to say this. But trying not to swear on air this week has been so hard because
in the breaks I've heard words that I've never heard of before.
The reason why the studio's blue is because of my language during the break about these stories, because it makes me so angry. It's when they say things like, and the Home Office is paying for it. Home Office doesn't pay for sodding anything. Yeah. You do, I do, our audience does. It's our bloody money. Exactly. How dare they? Genuinely, how dare they spend our money on this stuff? It's absolutely outrageous. It really is. Boris Johnson, meanwhile, done an interview with The Sun, and basically he's like, blasting Nigel Farage, and there's all this nonsense about Nigel Farage saying, you know, migrants are eating swans. It's like, Nigel, stop talking abject nonsense. It's ridiculous. This video on social media is about 7 years old or something. But he's also, Boris Johnson, defending his record on immigration. Mate, I mean, Boris Johnson, here's my advice to you. Zip it, mate. Zip it. You've got nothing useful to say on any topic ever again, in my view. Boris waved 1.2 million people imported to this country post-lockdown. We'll take back control, we'll get Brexit done, we'll limit people being able to just come into this country easily as any they choose. And then we took a whole load of people from the Indian subcontinent, and apparently we thought that that would be a good boost to the economy. I mean, I'm sorry. Zip it, Boris. Zip it.
Boris believes in Boris, and you know, he's getting airtime. So you know,
oh, no, I'm annoyed. I shouldn't even be talking about him.
There's clearly other people are interested in Boris, because if they weren't, he wouldn't be getting airtime, and that's the Boris factor. And you know,
you've still got the Nadine Dorries who still think that, you know, oh, you know, he's, you know, Andy Burnham, the king over the water for Labour, but he's the king over the ex-king over the water for the
Boris
Tories.
has got as much substance as Keir Starmer hasn't got, and as Andy Burnham hasn't got, and therefore, you know, the way our politics is at the moment, it's those sorts of characters that are getting, you know, the airtime, and they're focusing on, you know, a political party that has got 5 MPs. You know, reform, and everyone is saying reform is this big threat.
I know, and then Davies constantly going over the lib. Look, we've got over 70. Look at me.
Nigel living in Head's Head.
I mean, genuinely, that man talks. If I were Mrs. Davey, I'd be going, are you having an affair with Nigel Farage? Because you talk about him all the time. Can I just come back to the prisoners? And again, people go like, you know, trans women prisoners in women's jail, because I didn't give you a chance to have a word about this before the 11 o'clock news. But this extraordinary revelation that right now, currently, in English prisons, there are 5 men. Again, people say trans-identified, but they 5 men who claim to think that they are women. That's what they are, men who claim to think that they are women. I don't care whether they've had everything cut off. I don't care how many drugs they've had. You're born a man, you die a man, you are always a man, end of. And they're in a women's prison. There was a ruling by the Supreme Court that didn't change the law. It established that the law was and always has been that single-sex spaces are for single sex, and that is based on biology, not on what a man thinks on a Thursday afternoon. And it's that a single place, you know, a women's prison is for women. Why on earth is any man under whatever level of supervision in a women's prison still?
There's no reason whatsoever. And Ian Aitchison, who's a good friend, who's done this. He's been a prison governor. He's been an advisor into government on prisons and all the rest. He knows his stuff. He's come up with a perfectly acceptable and implementable solution. Why it's not happening,
special units in a men's prison, because they're men, but for vulnerable. What I love is the argument has been that, but these men, some of these men who might have transitioned enough to actually pass vaguely as a woman, although, guys, what do you expect? You don't.
No, you don't.
But even the ones who pass, that they are under greater risk from the male prisoners, that they may be sexually assaulted and the like. Oh my God, it's almost like there was a reason why we didn't want men in women's prisons.
Yes.
But I'm kind of with, you know, I think it's the Jermaine Greers and others who kind of make the point, they're like, not my problem.
Yeah.
As a woman, it's not my problem.
Exactly.
Like you sort that out, work, have your own unit, but you don't get to go to women's safer spaces.
But Ian's idea was quite clear. It kept individuals in a safe space where they could be housed with respect, as any human being should be, no matter how you want to identify.
But you don't get to be a risk to women.
But you don't get to be a risk to women.
I just don't understand why this is up for debate. I mean, this should have been dealt with on, you know, on May the 1st earlier this year. Certainly by the end of this week, they should be out of that prison. End of, nothing to discuss. And it's an absolute. Every single woman in that prison, lawyers need to go in. You know, sex matters.
Secretary needs to get a grip.
But the lawyers need to go in and literally just say, like, we are going to sue the backside off you for putting the women at risk, as they are doing. Bearing in mind, a lot of women prisoners are not in. Well, most of them are not in for violent crime or sexual crime, as a lot of these male prisoners are, and that they are largely people who've had a history of abuse from their fathers, stepfathers.
They're very vulnerable individuals.
They're victims of domestic abuse. They largely are not. You know, they're not. They're not Myra Hindley, you know, most of them. That's the reality.